Good morning and welcome to day 3 of Natural Scotland Week. We're really pleased to have a lot of you back with us this morning and really pleased to have a special guest with us here for today's lesson. But first, we're going to talk about what we learned yesterday. Don't worry if you weren't with us yesterday, that's okay, because you can always watch on recording. But if you were here yesterday, can you tell me one thing that you learned yesterday? Now, I was at yesterday's lesson, obviously, but also the early years story time, and I learned a couple of things yesterday. First off, I learned that slaters have segments. I always thought that they were round and smooth, but no, they have little bumps along the sides of their bodies. Yes, and like someone else has just said in the chat, that hedgehogs eat caterpillars to survive. I knew they ate worms and slugs, but I didn't know that they ate caterpillars. So we learned how important butterflies are for nature and how important weeds and wildflowers are, but also how important caterpillars are for keeping other animals that we know and love going well as well. Sometimes cocoons are underground. Yes, caterpillars are very fussy eaters and they like nettles. Yes, so we learned that nettles do have a good use. We shouldn't pull them all out. And we learned all about butterflies. Some very good answers in the chats. Oh yes, and then butterflies have hearts, but they don't quite look like ours. We need to have weeds. Yes, we need to make space for weeds in our gardens and school grounds. So just like yesterday, let's have a look at what we have in common with nature. This week, we've been thinking about all the amazing nature around us and how we're part of nature. So let's find out a couple more things that we have in common. Here's the first question. Where in your body could you find rhino horn? Do you think it's your bones? Put 2 hands up. Do you think maybe it's your teeth? Put 1 hand up. Or do you think it's your nails? Put 1 hand on your head. What do we have that's made of the same stuff as rhino horn? Have a think about what these different parts of your body feel like. Well, maybe you can't touch your bones, but you can guess, right? They're all quite hard things. So which one do you think is made of the same stuff as a rhino horn? Lots of guesses of nails, but a few people saying bones as well. I wonder what the right answer is. We'll give you another quick minute to have a guess. Interesting, no one so far is guessing teeth. Lots of you think that it's nails. Let's find out. Oh, there's the rhino horn. You can see, I guess looking at it doesn't give you much of a clue, but let's find out. Right. Everyone who said nails is correct. Rhino horn is made of something called keratin, and this is the same material that can be found in your nails and in your hair and in your skin. So that's pretty cool. Let's try another one. Remember yesterday we were talking about senses. Oh no, that was Monday. Yep, Monday we were talking about senses and some of the senses that we share with animals. Now, I'm going to think about slugs here and think about which of these senses do humans and slugs not share. So we have hearing, smell, taste, touch, and sight. Which one do you think that we and slugs don't have in common? It's a bit tricky one. So we can do all of those things, right? There must be one that slugs can't do that we can. Which one do you think that would be? Some guesses of sight and some of smell. Looks like we're not really sure. This is a tricky one. There's a definite mix of answers. Yes. Lots of guesses for B, which is smell. So maybe we think slugs don't smell as well as we do. Now, I've never really seen a slug's face up close, so I don't know if they have a nose or not. Right. So there's a definite mix of answers. There isn't any one answer that's proving the most popular one. Shall we find out? There's a slug. Doesn't really give any clue to look at it either, does it? You can't really tell. So let's find out. The answer is hearing. So it turns out that slugs can sense vibrations, but they don't hear sound the same way that we do. They can smell and taste and touch, and they can see, but their vision is limited and probably quite blurry, perhaps like mine is without my glasses. Now, we know that most of you, if not all, care deeply about wildlife and are doing many things to support it. So hands up if you have already or are planning to have a bug hotel in your school grounds. Let us know in the chat what you think about that. Bug hotel, if you don't know what it is, it's something like the thing in the picture. It's a special place for bugs to make a home, and it usually has lots of things that have holes in them, like hidey holes, like these tubes you can see there. Maybe some bricks and sticks that have hollow bits in them, some pine cones, maybe some moss, lots of things that give bugs lots of little hidey holes to hide in and make their nests. I see a lot of schools say they already have a bug hotel, which is amazing. And Mrs. Johnston's class said they started building one yesterday. That's brilliant. If you would like to share a picture of your bug hotel, I would love to see them. Bug hotels are something that I particularly like, and I'm trying to make space in my own garden for a bug hotel, so maybe I will share a picture of what I'm doing as well. But we'd love to see your bug hotels and hear about how you're building them. I'll tell you how to share that with us at the end of the lesson. But just now, we are very lucky to be joined by our friends Rebecca Lewis and Kerry Dodd from Buglife, and they both work in a very special project called Guardians of Our Rivers, which is all about bugs, but some very special bugs. Bugs that just depend on freshwater habitats. So even if they don't look like they would live in the water, they depend on it to live. So while we're getting switched over here, can you tell us what types of bugs that you've seen in your school grounds, maybe in your bug hotel?
So I'm just going to say a quick hello. So I'm Rebecca and this is Kerry. Hi. And we work for Buglife Scotland. So Kerry and I spend a lot of time traveling all over Scotland looking at rivers. Our project that we're going to talk about today is about getting people that live in your community, that maybe live down your street or work in your school, getting everybody involved in going out, looking in the rivers and seeing how healthy that they are. And the superpower that you find in your river are our freshwater invertebrates. So there's one in the picture on the slide here up the top right-hand side in a wee spoon. And this is one of our special flat body mayfly. Now, the invertebrates in our rivers need our rivers to be really clean and healthy. So getting lots of people out, finding the invertebrates, seeing if they're there is going to tell us how healthy they are. So we work with another organisation called the Riverfly Partnership. There's a nice wee picture on the slide there, and we work together to try and train people. Now, our project is called Guardians of Our Rivers. So we can all become guardians of our local rivers. And we explore our wonderful freshwater invertebrates. Some of you might be familiar with some guardians. We think our project is particularly special, but we know that there is other guardians out there. So Buglife. So you might have heard of Buglife, but we are Buglife, and we are the only organisation in Europe that's concerned with the conservation of all invertebrates. So what we want to do is to halt extinction. So we want to keep all the invertebrates healthy and alive and be there for lots and lots of generations to come. Now, I don't know that any of you can see a very, very special invertebrate that's on the picture in front of you in the slide. I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a wee look at it. See if you can figure it out. It's got 6 legs and it's got 3 tails out the back. Wonder if you can spot it. I'll give you a little bit of help. So this is called the upland summer mayfly, aka the ice walker. And if you didn't spot it, here's a wee arrow to show you where it is. Put a circle around it outside. So this invertebrate is surviving up in some very cold areas in Scotland. And it's a bit of a funny picture, but it's actually walking on the ice underneath, upside down. And it really needs these cold areas to survive. So we're keeping an eye on how it's doing. But it's not just about our very special ice walker. Buglife looks after all sorts of invertebrates. And maybe you can have a think about the ones that you can see in the picture here. So invertebrates don't have a backbone, unlike humans, for example, that we have a vertebrae or a backbone. So invertebrates don't have a backbone. So have you ever wondered what's living beneath the surface of our rivers? Let's have a little bit of an explore with this. So in terms of wildlife, it's really vital to life on Earth and includes lots of human life. So freshwater covers about 0.7% of all the water on the planet, and it's teeming with wildlife. So while these habitats cover less than 1% of the planet's surface, they support about 10% of all known species. And there are over 4,000 species of invertebrates in the UK, and many with only spending a little part of their life cycle in water. And this includes things like dragonflies, damselflies, snails, sponges, mayflies, loads and loads of different variety of things. And they can be found in our ponds or springs or ditches or lakes. Maybe you have a little stream running by your school that you've had a wee look in. So they do have lots of important things that they do. So they help us maintain the water, they keep the water clean, but they're also an important source of food for things like fish and birds and other mammals. You might see a little bird, a dipper, diving around in the rivers, diving down and getting mouthfuls of invertebrates. So it's really, really important that we have lots of different kinds of invertebrates and lots of them. So unfortunately, there's lots of pollution and different things happening at the moment in our rivers. So it's really important that we're keeping a good eye on them. There might be other things that, mysterious things that you've never thought of that you hear about in our rivers and our loch, like Loch Ness and the Monster, for example. So we want to go and have a little bit of an explore of what we might find. But it's so, so important that before you get started, that we remember to be safe. So we want to talk a little bit about health and safety. So this is my very good friend, Nikki here, and the photo on the left-hand side, and she's all geared up, ready with all her safety equipment on to go and take a sample in the river to see what's there. So what's she wearing? She's got gloves to keep her hands warm and dry, and just in case there's anything sharp in the watercourse that, she doesn't want to cut her fingers on. She's also wearing what's called a buoyancy aid. You can also wear life jackets, and this is going to help her float just in case she happens to fall over. Our rivers can be very, very slippy, especially this time of year. She's also wearing waders, so they're a little bit longer than your welly boots, so that the water doesn't go right over the top and fill her up and she gets wet feet. And what's she holding in her other hand? This is a very special kind of net that we use for doing sampling in our rivers. But what's also very, very important is that you never ever go alone when you're working in rivers. So Kerry and I will go together so that we can look out for each other and keep each other safe. But before we go in the river, we also tell somebody else where we're going to be. So what's beneath the water? So I did a little bit of a video here to have a look what's underneath. So there's a picture of my feet there, just standing about to walk in to our little water course. So let's have a little look what we can see. Keep an eye out for some of our invertebrates as we dive in and have a look around. You can see the different sizes of stones. We've got some algae grown on the rocks, all different shapes and colours of habitat there that invertebrates can hide in. See if you can spot anything. It's quite difficult standing. Oh, what's that? Oh, let's go back and have another wee look. Can you see something hiding there in between the stones? There's our freshwater shrimp, or gammarus. There can be hundreds and hundreds of them living in these little spaces. What else can we find? There's bits of leaf litter falling in, which also gets really good habitat for our invertebrates. They're looking for things with legs and things without legs. And they'll be in there feeding on, shredding up the leaves and feeding on the algae on the surface. Oh, I'm going to come out again and have another look somewhere else, see what else we can find. Here we have some very special invertebrates called olives, and we have a little limpet as well. You might have seen limpets when you go to the seaside. We've got limpets in our rivers as well. You see them there, just hanging on to the side of the stones. Got 3 tails out the back, 6 legs. It was quite difficult to stand still when filming this because the water was flowing really quickly. And out we come. So that's some of a little view into the secret world inside our rivers. And when we go out to collect our samples of invertebrates to see what's there, it's got a very special technique, and it's called kick sampling. So we spend 3 minutes just disturbing the stones and the substrate and the river channel, just kicking them with our foot, and we put the net underneath so that we can catch the invertebrates when they let go. So this is my friend Willie, and he's out there taking a kick sample. You're just wiggling around, just disturbing the area so that there's a cloud of water there that's flowing down into the net with all the invertebrates in it. And then you're going to spend a minute looking at rocks. So some of the things that are too big to kick with your foot, maybe you're picking up some rocks and stones and just having a really close check over and see if you can find anything else and washing them into the net. There we are. So when we've got our sample in our net, we then have to get sorting. So there's 2 important things that we have to do with our sample. So we're going to empty it into our tray and we're going to spread it out. And then we're going to grab our spoons. So if you've got a spoon in your kitchen drawer, that's what we use to sort through our invertebrates. And then we're going to use this very, very special tray here that's got lots of different sections and a mat underneath. And if you look carefully, you can see the picture of the invertebrates on the mat. So we've got to take our spoons and we've got to look for all these different kinds of invertebrates, and we've got to put them in the section on our tray. And then when we're finished doing that, we've got to count them. So we're going to find how many different kinds of invertebrates that we have, and also how many. So if we've got a stream with loads and loads of different kinds of invertebrates and loads of them, then that's a really healthy stream to be in. So I'm now going to pass you over to Kerry, who's going to talk about some of the really special things that we can find in our samples when we've taken our sample from our stream.
Hi, I'm going to talk about 3 different types of invertebrates. And the first one that we're going to look at is the cranefly. So what is the cranefly? Cranefly is the name that is given to a group of flies known as the daddy longlegs. They're called daddy longlegs, so I'm sure you can guess why, because they've got long, thin legs and a long, thin body. So most of the crayflies in the UK are the species Tipula pallidosus, and they're the ones that you're likely to see in your house because they're attracted to light at night. There are records of crayflies going back as far as 230 million years, which means that fossils can be found in sediments from the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. There are 350 different species of craneflies in the UK, and most of them are brown, and so they can be difficult to tell apart. So the life cycle of a cranefly. The cranefly starts off as an egg. It starts off with an egg that's directly laid on or around the water, and then when it rains, the eggs wash into the water, and the eggs hatch as larvae. And they can be a larvae for around a week or all the way up to a year. And they feed on the algae and the plants living in the river. The algae then becomes, the larvae then becomes a pupae. And it can live in this pupae case for up to 2 weeks. And then when it's ready, it'll emerge as an adult with its long legs and wings. And it's important that when it's a larvae, it gets to eat as much as food as possible because some of the adults don't have any mouths and so they can't feed. So as you can see, the craneflies all have a larval stage, and there are some craneflies that have their larval stage in fresh waters, and we find them when we collect our freshwater samples, the kick samples. So why do craneflies have such long legs? There are many theories, but one of them is that it helps protect their wings from breaking. They hold their legs out to the side when they fly, which means that their legs are longer than their wings. So if they bump into something like the wall or your window when they're trying to fly towards the light, their legs will hit first and it will protect their wings and their wings won't break. It might also be that the tiny surface of the end of their wings doesn't get stick to spiders' webs because not as much of their legs comes into contact with the sticky web. Or it might be because their legs get broken off easily if they're caught by a predator and then they can fly away. Craneflies are an important part of our ecosystem. The larvae that live in the water are prey for fish and larger invertebrates like dragonflies. And then when they emerge as adults and start flying around with those wings, they're important food for birds, bats, and hedgehogs and other animals. So when we identify animals and study them, we have to use a scientific name. And it's important for lots of reasons. And one of those reasons is so we don't get confused. And an example here is that daddy longlegs is also the name for a cellar spider, the cranefly, and a harvestman. So this means that if we all use the word cranefly, daddy longlegs, we might all get confused and be talking about 3 different types of things. So the scientific name for a cranefly is Topulidae. And Topulidae is a unique name that is understood all over the world. This is important because in America, sometimes they call crayflies mosquito eaters or mosquito hawks. Some parts of the UK call them Jenny longlegs, and in Irish, they can be called skinny Phillips. But no matter where you are in the world or what language you speak, Topulidae is the name for these flies, and everyone will understand what you're talking about. So our next invertebrate is the caddisfly. It's also known as the sedge fly. And the scientific name for this group means hairy wings. So sometimes when you look at the caddisfly, you might get it confused with a moth. But if you zoom in and you look at their wings, you can see that moths have scaly wings and caddisflies have hairy wings. So if you can have a look at photos number 1 and photo number 2 and have a think of which one you think looks like a caddisfly wing. You put up 1 finger if you think it's photo number 1 and 2 fingers if you think it's photo number 2. Which one do you think is the caddisfly? So hopefully you've all had a chance to answer. And the answer is Number 1 is the caddisfly wing, and number 2 is the moth wing. So here is the life cycle of the caddisfly. The adults lay their eggs on or under the water or on rocks and vegetation around the water. And again, this eggs gets washed in by the rain. Then the eggs hatch into these larvae. We have 2 different types of larvae, the cased caddis larvae and the caseless caddis larvae. I wonder if you can guess which one's which. The case has a case and the caseless doesn't have a case. When they're ready to form a pupa, the caseless caddis fix their case down onto the rocks and start to pupate, and the caseless caddis have to build a little case around them to turn into a pupae. When they emerge as the pupae, they swim to the surface, and the adult comes out of the pupal skin and then flies away to safety. So here are our 2 different types of caddises, the cased caddis and the caseless caddis. The cased caddis live in the cases, but they make from the material that they find on the riverbed. This can be plant material, small stones and shells, sand, leaves, things like that. When they live in their case, they move their body up and down to circulate the water over their body, and in this way they can extract oxygen from the water. The caseless caddis live in a shelter that they make out of silk, and they can use this to strain particles out of the water. Most of the caddis feed on algae and plant material they find on the riverbed. But there's one caddis, this caddis, the Rhycophilidae. This one is a predator, and it actively hunts other invertebrates it finds on the riverbed. There are 200 species of caddis in the UK. So here you can see that as well as making their case out of stones and shells, some people have been put their case caddis in a tank full of precious materials like gold and jewels to get the caddis to make jewellery. But if there is plastic on the riverbed, they can use these bits of plastic to make their case. Once plastic is part of their case, it makes their case weaker and much easier to damage. This means they won't be protected from fish that try to eat them. And also plastic makes their case lighter because plastic is lighter than the small stones or the shells that they might make their cases out of. And if they have light cases, it means that they might get washed away downstream. My next invertebrate, it's a mayfly. So mayflies can appear all throughout the year, not just in May. And their name comes from this mayfly on the right, the true mayfly, which is the ephemera danica. And this emerges as an adult, so it goes through the life cycle and then gets its wings and flies away in May, or when the mayflower blossoms. And the mayflower is the name of the blossom on the hawthorn tree. The scientific name for the mayflies is Ephemeroptera, and ephemera means something that only lasts for a very short of time. And this is because some adult mayflies only live for 1 or 2 days. They have to, like some of the crane flies, they have no mouth parts, and so they have to feed up lots when they're larvae, and they have to eat as much algae and vegetable matter as possible, because when they're adults, they have no mouth parts. And that means that some of these larvae can live in the riverbed for up to 2 years. The ephemera can. The others last for about a year, storing up as much energy as they can. So this is why river health is really important, because it will have an impact on how long the adults live. So mayflies are one of the first winged insects, and their fossils go back over 300 million years to the Carboniferous period, which means they can be found before craneflies and even before dinosaurs. The mayfly larvae and adults emerging are a vital source of food for other freshwater creatures such as fish and like salmon and trout. And again, the adults get fed on by birds. So the life cycle of the mayfly: the adult lays their eggs on the surface and they get washed into the river. And the nymph goes through up to 50 molts, and then it emerges up to the surface and emerges as an adult. And the mayfly is the only winged insect with 2 winged stages. So we have 2 different types of adult. The dun, which is the first stage of its adult life, part of the life cycle, where it has shorter wings and they're a bit cloudier. And then it emerges again as its final stage as a spinner. So here I've got some photos to show you how the dun transfers into a spinner. It folds its wings down, and then the skin splits, and out comes a larger mayfly with larger, clearer wings, longer legs, and longer tail. But that's the 3 invertebrates: the mayfly, the cranefly, and the caddisfly. Let's pass you back to Rebecca.
Oh, thanks, Kerry. I love that last run of slides where they come out. Have you seen the movie Predator and come out and emerge? Absolutely beautiful. And he's really long front legs that then he used to grab onto the female so that they can mate. So we've talked about the health and safety. We've talked about taking a sample and why we're doing it, and the fact that invertebrates really tell us how healthy that our rivers are. They have a little bit of a superpower in that. There's also something else that we have to think about, and we have to think about when we are out doing our sampling, and we have to think about it when we're looking in our trade to see what we can find. There are other things that we don't want to find when we're looking in our rivers. Now, Buglife loves invertebrates. We love invertebrates, all shapes and sizes. However, sometimes the bugs can end up where they're not supposed to be, and that can often lead to problems. So this is also true for plants as well. So we have a picture on our slide here. We've got some invasive species. So they're non-native species that when they arrive in this country, they cause problems for the other species that are there, the native species. So at the top of the screen, we've got a picture of Himalayan balsam. Now, you might have seen this when you're out walking along the river banks. We've also got giant hogweed. Now, this is one you especially want to avoid because it can cause nasty blisters on your hand if you touch it. We've also got Japanese knotweed down at the bottom left. And at the top, we've got a couple of species of freshwater shrimp called the killer and the demon shrimp. We've also got a signal crayfish. You can see its bright red claws there in the middle picture on the right-hand side. And another plant called American skunk cabbage. So there are more than 3,700 non-native animals and plant species in the UK. And many of them only turn up occasionally and don't breed here. So they don't cause many problems. So they're harmless and unlikely to cause damage to the other species that are there. We've got some species of stick insects, for example, that can be found in England that just get on with their daily lives and don't cause problems. In fact, of all the species that are introduced that are not native, there's fewer than 300 of the UK species thought to have a negative or a bad impact on our environment and our health. So these are known as invasive species and are difficult to control. So within our ecosystem, so our river itself is an ecosystem, is a really delicate balance of species which have lived with each other for a really, really long time. So they keep it, they live happily together, and you add in these invasive species and they can compete for the different food sources. They're kind of fighting for habitat space. They may carry disease or infection that kill the native species, and it's really difficult to control them. So when we're out and about, we're making sure that when we do our sample, that we're looking through our equipment and we're following these very important steps. So we want to check. So we check our equipment, we wash off our waders, we check the net and all of our trays and spoons and equipment and wash it all down at the site. We want to clean it all off, and checking the folds in our our grips in our welly boots, little spaces where these tiny little invertebrates could hide out. And then importantly, we dry it all off. So when the sun's shining, I'll come home and I'll dip it all in hot water and clean it off, and then I'll spread it out in my garden to dry in the sunshine to make sure that we don't take any of these invasive species into other locations across the country. So I'd like to say thank you so very much for listening to Kerry and I today talk about the job that we love to do in rivers right across Scotland. And I'll just say thank you to all of the people that have made it possible to do our work. Thank you very much.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So many cool facts about invertebrates, and I really liked how you showed us how you do the sampling and ooh, and the pictures of the invertebrates close up as well. Wow, that's a pretty interesting looking face. It's good to see them up close because they're so different and they're so small. You don't get to see what they look like up close until you see a picture like that. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for that. I just have a couple things to say before we finish up. Just get this started. And of course, it's on the wrong slide. That's always good. Right. So just a quick reminder of what we'd like you to do this week during Natural Scotland Week. Remember, we have our land art competition where we're talking about nature is happiness, and we're asking you to make a picture with found things on the ground, not picking things or not breaking trees or anything like that, just using things that have already been on the ground, already fallen on the ground, you can pick up and put back later to make some art that tells us what you think nature means happiness means to you. And you can say hello and share your work. You can show us your bug hotels or your land art entries by emailing them to us at ecoschools@keepscotlandbeautiful.org. Or you can find us on most social media platforms at KSB Scotland. And if you have any questions about invertebrates or bugs and anything that we learned today or at any point during the week, you can email them to us as well. We still have some questions about butterflies from yesterday that we're hoping to answer on Friday. And if you have any questions for our friends at Buglife, you can send them to us and hopefully we can work together to get an answer for you for Friday as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Rebecca and Carrie from Buglife, for your brilliant lesson on invertebrates. That was very good. I learned so much. I'm really glad you were able to spend some time with us today, but that's all we have time for today. So bye for now.